and just stop me because I answer questions better than I make statements. But we were part of the 4th Marine Division and went in as the 23rd Regiment. And prior to that, on Saipan and Tinian and Iwo, Roy and Namur, we have been part of the 24th Regiment. So they moved us around quite a bit. We were taken to Roy and Namur, which is the Marshall Islands, aboard the APA-42, a troop transport ship, converted Kaiser ship, and designed primarily for troop transport. Good ship. But,
Sure.
oh, sure. I'm sorry.
No. So, Mr. Luttrell, what did your work as a member of the Marine Corps entail? What was your job? What did you do on the battlefield?
Oh, in the Marine Corps. Primarily, I was a spotter for the Navy. The Navy, of course, can get their shells into an area, but they can't see or see what the shells are doing. So my team landed with the earliest part of the invasion forces and called in the results of the shots that were being fired from the Navy vessels and corrected those to where they were doing the most damage.
How did you end up joining the Marines? So the question is, did you choose to join the Marines, and what made you decide to join the war effort and to join the Marines?
I tried to join the Marines when I was 18, early 18, but my mother would not sign the papers that were needed. So my older brother was already in, and my younger brother and myself didn't go in until 1942 when I was 18, and he was 17 because she knew he was going to go anyhow. So she finally conceded to allow us to go in ahead of the draft.
And what made you want to enlist?
It was trying to get even with the Japanese for a surprise attack on our home troops at Honolulu, Pearl Harbor.
What did one of the students ask? What was your daily routine? What did an average day look like as a member of the Marines in World War II? Any aspects of your day? What did you eat? What was life like as an enlisted man?
Our normal day started at 5 in the morning, and at 5 we were expected to be showered, dressed, and on the parade grounds waiting to be told what to do. And after our first calisthenics, it's called exercise under arms. We had a lot of different names for that, which we can't go into here. We would shower, shave, and get ready and go through the calisthenics and then fall out for breakfast. And breakfast was over, we'd take up the more physical parts of our training, either running or hiking in the boondocks of California or Hawaii, or wherever we happened to be at that time. And that was part of our training schedule, of course. And then we'd exercise under arms for, we used rifles for weights, And it was just general conditioning at that point.
One of our students asked, what did it feel like going into war, particularly going into battle, knowing that it was possible that you wouldn't come back alive? What was that? What kind of thoughts went through your mind, or what was that part of the experience like? I know that is potentially difficult to speak to, but
I think you tried not to dwell too much on what the results could be, because we all knew what the end could bring. Meeting an armed force. We were trying to get them before they got us. But you had different feelings. But I think the fact that we thought we were doing in the rights, and I still do, that we were the grieving party. We had been attacked by the Japanese, and we were just trying to get our equilibrium and the ground that they were taking back.
Particularly in the Battle of Iwo Jima, what was your role and what was your experience? I know that was where you were injured in battle, and then were able pretty remarkably to make it back to safety. But can you speak at all to what the Battle of Iwo was like?
The battle at Iwo was sort of the culmination of several years of training and actual encounters with the enemy on different levels. But I was a spotter and the head of the radio team that was calling naval gunfire on Iwo. And our main mission was to correct the locations of where the shells were falling on Iwo, because the Navy doesn't have the vision that we had. We were up close, and we could see how far off the shells were missing the main part of the target, and by correcting them by radio, a lot more effective with the gunfire that way. It was just a refinement of the old naval gunfire periods.
And that was where you were injured in battle and made it back to safety. And as I've read some of your story, it sounds like you were helped by a fellow member of the Marine Corps, and you made it back in pretty dramatic fashion. How did that part of, maybe my question is, what recollections do you have of your evacuation from Iwo, and then what was, I know, the recovery like for that, because that was not a simple thing. So in terms of experiencing that piece of things, what was that like for you?
Well, we landed on Iwo on the 19th of February 1945, and we were there. I landed on the 19th, which was D-Day on Iwo. Landed on the 19th, and the remainder, we landed about 9 in the morning, and the remainder of that day was spent advancing past Yamagata airfield about 300 yards. And it was stiff opposition all the way, but later in the day, we got a heads up position on the island and secured our position for the evening. On the morning of the 21st, that was the 20th, on the morning of the 21st at about 9 o'clock, we went out to put up a 20-foot antenna so we could have better communication with the ships we were firing. And shortly after that, a fragment of they think it was a 5-inch mortar, which would have been the diameter of the mortar. And a piece of that entered my left cheek and penetrated the entire face, came out on the right side, taken with it practically all but 6 of my teeth, and the hard palate and the soft palate, and just generally tore out the inside of my mouth. And the learning process after that was trying to learn how to breathe and talk again with the assistance of false teeth and whatever else it took to bring it around. And yeah, we were scared. I think it'd been foolish not to be with those odds, because chances we were losing troops on that day, the first 2 days. About 2 out of every 5 were being lost, so at about a 40% casualty list the first couple of days. But I think you just got to have faith and believe in what you're doing and overcome those fears.
I've got one more kind of set of questions, and then we can turn it over to the audience if there are any questions in the audience. So these questions come a little bit about what it was like for you after the war. And so there's 2 questions here. The first is, do you remember where you were and what it felt like when you learned that the war was over?
I was more than gratified. I was extremely happy to think that we wouldn't have to face this type of opposition or retribution, whatever it was. But we were glad, and I particularly was glad to be out of the range of fire. And what's the other?
Well, and then the next question was, what was life like after the war when you came back? How was it like returning to normal everyday life after having had those experiences?
Well, it took me about 10 months to get out of the hospital. There was a lot of repair work to be done, and I had a choice of either going to school or being an apprentice in a newspaper, and I chose the apprentice situation, and became a stereotyper, which was a 6-year apprenticeship. And I worked at the trade, the stereotyping trade, for about 15 years. And the newspapers decided to go to a different type of printing, which cost them less money, I think. They went offset, so the job I had was actually eliminated. And I could have gone back in for more training and turned offset, but instead I opted to open a garden center right here in South County, and I did that for about 30 years, finally retired.
Well, we're so appreciative that you have taken the time and are taking the time to share about your experiences. Are there questions in the audience? Any questions that you'd like to ask? Caden, go ahead and say your question, and then I'm going to repeat it into the microphone so that Mr. Luttrell can hear it.
How was it like looking for the missile crisis during the Cold War?
So Caden's asking about later on, much later after the war, when you experienced things that were part of the Cold War, like the Cuban Missile Crisis and those kind of things. What was your experience of the kind of subsequent wars, or even the Cold War?
Didn't feel as personally involved in those things because if you're not actually in there and being shot at, I don't think you can get the feeling, and I was not involved other than emotionally and politically felt that our country was still in the right position and doing the things that I believed in.
Sutton? Can you say your question again? Did you fight with someone with the last name Taggart? Did you know anyone in the military with the last name Taggart?
No.
How many of you had relatives that fought in World War II? Go ahead and raise your hands if you had relatives that fought in World War II. I remember. Me too. Yeah. Did any of you have relatives that fought in the Pacific Theater? Yes, many of you. Yeah. It must. I mean, when you came back, that was true of almost everybody had been involved in the war effort in some way, right?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, if you were not involved directly in the military part, you were probably working for an organization that provided arms or armament or material for the war effort. That was the main thing that this country did for the entire period from 1941 to 1945.
Ken mentioned having two brothers in the war. Can you speak about what arms of the military they were involved and did they survive the war?
Ken, you had two brothers that were involved in the war, is that right?
Yes.
What branches of the military were they in, and what was their experience?
I did have two brothers involved in the war. One was a naval aviator, and his primary position for most of the war was providing shore patrol on both coasts, West Coast, California, and the East Coast. They were flying constantly, looking for stray boats coming in. But he says the main part of his job was locating wrecked aircraft that had gone down in the areas he was in and trying to save the people on those aircraft. My other brother was in the Army Air Corps, and he was involved with helicopters, and mostly in this country, though, not abroad.
What are your thoughts on spam?
Did you ever eat Spam as part of your rations, and what are your thoughts about it?
It's pretty good if you're hungry. I think we have a far better diet today, though. But it's not the most appealing, although it tasted a lot like ham. But you couldn't help but think that it was something else.
Did you ever get to see or take in any of the USO entertainment that was provided?
Did you ever get to see or take in any of the USO entertainment that was provided? Did you get to see or experience any of the entertainment that was provided for soldiers?
We had some entertainment on occasion while we were in training, but there was very little entertainers up in the combat zones. There might have been one, but they usually don't want to take a chance with them.
How long did you make it before you got shot?
Say that again.
How long did you make it before you got?
Will's asking, how long were you in combat areas before you ended up injured on EWO and then evacuated?
From late mid 43 till about June of 1943 until I was wounded on the 21st of February in 1945, so that a couple of years.
All right, we're nearing the end of our time. I think just as my last question, as someone who's, was the same age as some of our older high school students here when you decided to enlist, these days it feels pretty distant to think about having to sign up as an 18-year-old to risk your life to serve your country, and obviously that takes a lot of selflessness and courage. Are there any words of wisdom or advice that you would give to this generation? Obviously they're not facing the exact circumstances that you were as an 18-year-old, but there are things that you learned from that experience that I imagine would be really beneficial for every generation, but including this one. Are there any words that you want to share with them?
I would think you would want to look on it as an optional vocation that's available to you, and if the regimented life is appealing to you, and it is regimented in many ways, and not everyone is prepared to live that life, because you've got a lot of people to answer to. But if you like regimentation, it offers some opportunities for you to pursue that. And I know a lot of good people that do, and they're very happy in what they do, and a few who aren't.
Well, again, we're incredibly grateful for your service to our country, for taking the time to meet with us and share with us. We're going to close in just a moment here because I know that the upper schoolers need to head to lunch. There are books and other things up here for you to peruse. There are bookmarks that Mr. Luttrell has signed that you will be able to take with you that you can keep as a keepsake. And again, this is a unique opportunity to get to hear from somebody who has experienced these things firsthand. And I think Mr. Luttrell will be up here for a few minutes afterwards as well, if you wish to shake his hand and thank him. But let's give a round of applause and of thanks to Mr. Luttrell. At this point, upper school, you are dismissed to lunch. If you want to linger and check out things or say hi, you're welcome to, but you're also free to head to lunch.